Shabbat Shalom, everyone. It's so nice to see everyone's face, and I do so appreciate when I see people singing along. It makes me feel like we are together. Just a few words of Torah for tonight. This week's portion is the famous showdown between Moses and Korach. Korach's claim, "Aren't all of us holy? Why do you, Moses, put yourself above the congregation?" It's interesting, Korach's claim, because after all, Moses is, according to the Torah, the most humble man in the world. Why would Korach think Moses is putting himself above the rest of the congregation? This leads the rabbis to ponder the meaning of what is Moses's humility. And more than that, to ponder what is the meaning of true humility. Moses, they say, is the model of humility, not because he thinks that he is undeserving or inadequate. That is a false humility, they say. It's a kind of protesting. Oh, please, I don't deserve this Academy Award. The rabbis teach that Moses' example of what it means to be humble is the opposite of false humility. It is that you hold yourself only to your own standard. That is, rather than comparing yourself to other people, a really humble person compares themselves only to themselves. The race a humble person runs is against themselves, not against anybody else. The progress of other people, the other people in the race, are in fact, their progress is in fact irrelevant to your own progress. In other words, knowing that you are talented or smart or fast or funny and acknowledging that is not antithetical to humility. It is part of the charge that a humble person must recognize. How do we use our talents to the highest degree we can? Moses doesn't have to claim he isn't holy. That's not true. The difference is he cannot claim that he is holier than anyone else. Rav Kook highlights this in his commentary on the personal attribute or midah of humility. When he addresses this in Midot HaRa'aya, or the characteristic of pride, he says, quote, "A person can find in himself certain spiritual elements which are great, important, and very elevated, but he should not be arrogant on account of the good elements. To the contrary, he should be endlessly filled by them with a spirit of humility. For it is they which awaken in him that he demand of himself the development of these elements which are now in him in the form of potential." Let's put it this way. It's okay if I say, in this pandemic, I am being very creative. But it's not okay for me to say, in this pandemic, I am being more creative than the rabbi in the shul down the street. Rav Kook's understanding of humility points to the way that we often misunderstand what humility and arrogance truly are. And that is what I think Korach did. He misunderstood Moses' true humility. Humility is not thinking badly of yourself, and arrogance is not thinking that you are great. Dina Weiss writes, "Arrogance is comparing yourself to other people, and humility is comparing yourself to yourself." Arrogant people make excuses for themselves based on the behavior of others. At least I'm not as bad as that person. By contrast, a humble person looks inward and asks, who am I? What can I do? What is my purpose? And how can I reach that goal? Rav Kook echoes this sentiment in his exploration of humility when he says, whenever humility brings sadness, it is invalid. But when it is valid, it increases joy, strength, and self-esteem. False humility depresses us. If we're constantly comparing ourselves to other people and we're using that to be our sense of humility, we will walk around depressed a lot of the time. Being humble does not mean being self-depreciating. A humble person strives to see themselves through the eyes of God, not through the eyes of other people. So Korach's claim against Moses is not that he isn't truly humble. Korach's claim is that Moses places himself above the community, and it's an utterly false claim because Moses never compares himself to anyone else. I find this teaching to be very helpful in this time of COVID. I don't have to be as productive as my next door neighbor. I just have to be as productive as I can be. I don't have to start another sourdough project after killing my first 2 sourdough projects just because my friend is successful at their sourdough project. I don't have to cook better than my friend. I don't just have to cook as well as I do already. We don't have to be better online than the next shul. We just have to be the best online that we can be. And I think we actually have succeeded in that. A Hasidic story is told about Reb Zusha. When Reb Zusha was on his deathbed, his students found him in uncontrollable tears. They tried to comfort him by telling him that he was almost as wise as Moses and as kind as Abraham. So he was sure to be judged positively and go to heaven. He replied, "When I get to heaven, I will not be asked, 'Why weren't you like Moses?' And I will not be asked, 'Why weren't you like Abraham?' I will only be asked, 'Why weren't you like Zusha?'" COVID is teaching us not to look at others' abilities, but to look at our own, to own our own abilities, to use them and celebrate them. But don't hold them up against other people and don't hold them over other people's heads. That should really help us as we continue to contemplate this challenging time. Shabbat Shalom.